We have today with us Mr. Shafqat Kakakhel, who had been ambassador to Middle East and various other countries as well, and he's expert of the region. Shafqat Kakakhel, a very warm welcome to the program. In the very start, I would ask you to give us a just basic premise of this relationship from which we should start.
Well, I think we can start with the premise that Pakistan-US relationship, despite the fact that it is a relationship between a small developing country and a country that has been and perhaps continues to be the global superpower, in spite of this, it's an extremely important relationship. It is important because it not only determines a number of things. It has impact on a number of things within Pakistan, but it also decisively impacts on the region, on South Asia, on West Asia, the region in which Pakistan is located.
What are the basic ingredients?
Well, ideally, the basic ingredient of any bilateral relationship between any two countries is the mutuality of interest. There has to be mutuality of interest in the sense that the two countries must have something that they jointly pursue. In the case of Pakistan-US relationship, this mutuality has sometimes existed and it has sometimes been lacking. For the most part, somehow both countries have looked at the relationship from the narrow prism of their own national interest. In the late 70s, when the Soviet Union went into Afghanistan, the mutuality was again not perfect. The manner in which the terms of this relationship or this alliance were framed had more to do with who interpreted the national interest of Pakistan. The national interest of Pakistan was defined by General Ziaul Haq, who had a vision of Pakistan that was not necessarily in the best interest of the country. So I think we have to see that those who are defining the terms of national interest to be pursued in the bilateral relationship have to genuinely represent their own people. In the case of the United States, you can broadly say that. But can you say this about General Zia or about General Musharraf? These are military usurpers whose first concern was the perpetuation of power for themselves, and all other considerations were subordinated to this paramount objective. And in that process, national interest became blurred. National interest took the second seat, the back seat, in the pursuit of foreign policy. So that has been a problem, and now the challenge is that we have to be very careful that we negotiate with the United States with a very clear understanding of exactly what Pakistan's legitimate national interests in the relationship are.
Now there's a political setup and a very strong military is also there. Whom do you think that the American or the power or the outside world should talk? Who represent Pakistan?
This is a very relevant question, and it has become very relevant in the wake of the statement that the National Assembly adopted, I think it was in March, on the terms of engagement or re-engagement with NATO. This was perhaps for the first time that the Parliament not only discussed the broad guidelines of the relationship, but also went into the specifics of the relationship, and which is perhaps not desirable. In most countries, parliaments do define the broad contours of foreign policy, but leave the specific details or the tactical details to the executive branch. And the negotiations of foreign policy issues is always the prerogative of the executive. So in this case, perhaps because we are not used to democratic traditions, the parliament may have gone beyond the role that its counterparts play elsewhere. The parliament has spoken, and the important thing is that now which creates certain problems for the government. But I think there is no substitute to the imperative of ensuring that the executive branch works in harmony with the parliament, however deficient the parliament may be. That's the name of the game when you want to introduce democracy, which is, I think, what the overwhelming majority of Pakistanis want.
There are genuine problems as far as the policy initiative is concerned, or they are just administrative problems as far as the regimes are concerned in Pakistan, and they'll go away with time?
The most important determinant of our Pakistan-US relationship is what is happening, what is unfolding in Afghanistan. This is a situation, the so-called war on terror, which led the United States and its NATO allies to go into Afghanistan in a big way. And 10 years, billions of dollars, lots of people killed on both sides, military personnel on the side of the NATO, a lot of human casualties on the side of Afghanistan and Pakistan. And there is pretty precious little to show for all that human and military and material investment. And now the feeling in Pakistan is that the United States, because of domestic situation and because President Obama would like to be seen to be fulfilling his electoral pledge of bringing the boys back, that the United States may be under pressure to explain away the dismal failure of its armed forces and the dismal failure of the entire NATO alliance to dislodge a ragtag coalition of ill-equipped, well-motivated but ill-equipped bunch of people, the so-called Taliban and all. But I personally think that for a variety of reasons, both countries, Pakistan and the United States, have to sit together. The United States should realize the importance of Pakistan, where it is located, the geopolitical location, and the mere fact that this is a nation of 180 million with a professional, a very strong army with nuclear weapons. And you don't deal with a nuclear power in a casual or perfunctory manner. Look at the efforts that the West has been making to try and engage North Korea in a dialogue, in an amicable settlement of the nuclear question. So I think both countries realize this. The dialogue is going on, contrary to what the Pakistani press mentioned. There has not been a breakdown in the dialogue. The technical level details have been discussed.
When the election fever is over in the United States, the relationship is going to improve?
I wouldn't say that the relationship is only dependent on the question of Afghanistan or the question of the US election. There are a number of imponderables. There are a number of external factors. How does China look at Afghanistan? China is now a very important player on the global scene. How does Iran figure into the calculations? Throughout our relationship with the United States accepted that Pakistan will have a cordial relationship with Iran. This was, of course, before the Islamic Revolution. How does the United States behave with Iran on the nuclear question or on any other question? How does the United States conduct itself in the Asian theater? There has been a trend for moving naval ships to the Pacific, the strengthening of the defenses in the Pacific Rim. There are efforts made by the United States to further cement its ties with the countries with which China has outstanding territorial disputes in the South China region. These are all facts where how Pakistan views the United States moves, given its very substantial relationship with China. These will all have their impact. All of these will impinge on the content and the quality of Pakistan-US relationship.
This main struggle that is going on is for trade and energy corridor, and now the Shanghai Forum, Pakistan is looking for options to join them or redefine its relationship with the United States.
These twin pursuits, the quest for energy and the quest for markets, are actually driving the foreign policies of all countries. I cannot think of any country in the world which can conduct its internal or external policy without reference to energy and without reference to markets or international trade. So these considerations will have a decisive say. And but exactly how the drama unfolds is very difficult. It's very difficult to predict. On the one hand, it is said that the United States would like to secure its energy supplies, as indeed would China and India, which is becoming a major user of energy. On the other hand, which oil producer or gas producer would refuse to sell energy and oil to the United States and the Western Alliance?
All energy reserves which are at the north of Caspian Sea, if this trade and energy corridor is not open for the West, Russia is going to have a handle over that.
Markets and energy will continue to serve as major determinants of security and foreign policies of most countries.
This right-wing extreme militancy that exists and that was created obviously for some reason, it's playing its part. How do you see this situation?
Well, as far as the perceptions of the Americans being hell-bent on undermining Pakistan, these are confirmed. These are corroborated by the various polls that have been taken, which show that between 90 and 95% Pakistanis express views which are not very complimentary about the United States. That is a fact. On the other hand, you have to also understand that the major political parties which are represented in the parliament today, whether it's the two factions of Muslim League, whether it's the People's Party, and barring the Jamiat Ulama Islam, most of the old established political parties have been careful about their pronouncements about the United States. Naturally, on some questions such as the apology for Salala massacre or the incident in Lahore and all, there is a measure of unity. But we have to remember that the so-called Defy Pakistan is a bunch of extra-political forces. These are people
who created them, who put them together. Because in Defy Pakistan, those people are who had been working against the state interest of Pakistan.
That's why I call them extra-political. These are people who have either...
Who created them?
By the parliament, by the people of Pakistan in the elections, or they have stayed away from the elections. In the case of Jamaat Islami, they voluntarily abstained from taking part in the election. So are we in a democracy allowing ourselves to be led by the extra parliamentary forces, or are we going to accept parliament as the legitimate forum for decision making? I think that's an important point. And we have to constantly remember that even if the slogans that there is are extremely emotive and somehow sound like being in consonance with the wishes of Pakistan, foreign policy in general and relations with a superpower are two serious matters to be left to be determined on the streets of Pakistan. They have to be determined very carefully by people who reflect on the various issues, pros and cons of various moves, keeping short-term, intermediate and long-term interests in perspective.
Do you think all players, all stakeholders, or all decision makers, important branches in United States are on one same page? Pentagon, Capitol Hill, and the State Department?
The differences are of nuance and not of substance. There may be differences on tactical aspects, but on the core objectives, the United States, being a democracy, has the checks and balances and has the means of ensuring the necessary coordination among the three branches and as well as the armed forces of the United States.
So it's a collective decision.
It's more or less collective decision. And there are, of course, individuals, they bring their own flavor. If you had John Kerry, he would not talk like Panetta, who spoke in the most obnoxious of manners, in a very unhelpful manner, and particularly sitting in New Delhi and Kabul. So both the content of his speeches and the places he chose for his diatribes, I think one can only call it extremely unfortunate and regrettable. The Pakistani ambassador, Sherry Rahman, said it restricts the amount of oxygen to those in both countries who are trying very hard to resolve issues. It creates problems for the negotiators. It vitiates the atmosphere. And one hopes that the messages from friends and, would be to Mr. Panetta, would be to choose his words and the place he utters them more carefully. I think in the immediate future we will continue to have waves in our relationship. There will be dust storms and there will be hurricanes. There will be occasional calm. I think the important thing is to look at the ultimate objective and not be led by episodal developments such as Panetta's statement here or somebody else's statement there. Diplomacy is not following the headlines but following the national interest as defined in a very careful and deliberate manner.
Internal condition of Pakistan, which is determined by lack of energy security, weak financial health, and a sagging economy. And on the back of this, political strikes and the social unrest and agitation which is coming in, it's going to lead to a sort of spring which can be compared to the Arab Spring, and then United States would come and turn the handle and ask Pakistan to do something on its nuclear arsenal.
Well, that's a very pessimistic scenario, and I hope that despite the disturbing signs which you mentioned, it doesn't come to that. We've had our springs. We resisted Ayub Khan, we resisted the excesses of a Democrat, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. We resisted.
Of an excessive Democrat, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto as well.
Exactly.
You put him in the same bracket.
No, he committed excesses, which are undeniable. Within months of the adoption of the Constitution, he dissolved the two provincial governments, where his party was not the majority. So the Pakistanis have had many springs. We are used to spring. We have a long constitutional history, unlike the Arab countries, where constitutionalism has been a rare phenomenon. And the other thing is that you have to look at some of the basic elements of the resilience of Pakistani economy. This country produces enough to feed itself. This country produces enough to clothe itself. And it also has an informal economy, which is highly undesirable in certain respects, but is a matter of fact.
And it's desirable as well.
You have 12 million Pakistanis living abroad whose hard-earned money does find its way back into the country and keeps the foreign exchange situation stable. So while I would not minimize the negative factors, which are extremely profound, I think the negative factors have to be addressed. As far as the IMF, World Bank are concerned, just imagine the packages that are being offered to countries far more smaller than Pakistan. Just think of the package that is being negotiated for Greece, which would be what? The population of Greece would be perhaps less than Khyber Pakhtunkhwa.
Now they are giving 100 billion to Spain as well.
So they are getting many times more billions and all that, whereas the biggest package, the IMF package for Pakistan, has never been in sort of, it has always been in 4 figures.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The pleasure was mine.